KC Cares is the intersection of the nonprofit and profit communities, making Kansas City a better place to live, work, and play. This KC Cares segment is brought to you by the Ewing Marion Kauffman Foundation, www.kauffman.org. I'm Ruth Baum-Biggis. It is difficult to be an immigrant in this country, including Kansas City. There are numerous challenges. Among them is sometimes facing deportation. For low-income people facing deportation or other challenges from the Immigration Service, obtaining qualified and affordable representation is difficult at best. Well, there is a local nonprofit that is working to make a difference in this area. It's the clinic at Sharma Crawford Attorneys at Law, and they're laser focused on helping immigrants in this battle. Founded in 2012 by attorneys Rekha Sharma Crawford and her husband, Michael Sharma Crawford, this legal duo has been hard at work helping those who want to stay here achieve their dream. Well, Rekha, who serves as the clinic's president, joins me today to talk about the work she's doing in making a difference and how she even got into all of this work. Rekha, thank you so much for joining KC Cares.
Thank you, Ruth. It's a pleasure.
Well, let's start from the very beginning and tell folks, how did you even contemplate doing anything like this? This is really tough work.
Well, I come from a prosecution background. My husband comes from law enforcement background. We were courtroom trial lawyers at heart. And when we saw that there wasn't enough representation, as access to counsel was such a huge issue, right? There's not an automatic right to counsel in removal proceedings. And so there's this huge gap in the community. So 10 years ago, we think, well, if not us, who? And we took it on to say, we're going to come and we're going to fill this gap. And we were lucky enough to have a brilliant crackerjack attorney who was fresh out of law school, but had a fire in her belly. And Ginevra Alberti became our clinic attorney. And the three of us set off like, who was going to stop us?
You make it sound incredibly easy. I know, running a nonprofit in and of itself is one thing. And then you're dealing with a nonprofit and running a law practice. So share how you balance that. I think it's a balance for anybody who's a nonprofit person and then has a quote unquote side gig. You have more than a side gig.
No, it's like two full-time jobs, quite honestly. And I will tell you, it was not easy. Some days it's still not easy. It's just one of those things that we feel like it really is something that needs to be done, and that we're serving our community by making sure that people who need the help are getting the help. And so on those tough days, I won't lie, we sometimes have a little extra tequila, but we keep going because again, it's one of those things that there's no other way for people to get proper representation. And in a system that's already hard to navigate when you don't know the rules, and you don't have the right to a lawyer, it's daunting. And so we look at it and we go, okay, we can get overwhelmed. I bet other people are even more overwhelmed because they're new to the system. They don't have the help. And so we just kind of try and keep perspective to say we may be overwhelmed, but they're probably more overwhelmed. And so we just keep on going with that.
Why did you decide to go a nonprofit route as opposed to just, a legal practice that, might be able to set rates, et cetera?
Because if you think about it, the clinic is literally the only nonprofit from the Colorado border to the middle of Missouri. There is no other nonprofit that is dedicated solely to representation in immigration court. So, with that large of a gap, the issue becomes is how do we fill it? How do we address it? And most law firms, the problem becomes is that law firms are only as healthy as the clients that they're helping. And so we needed a way to be able to reach those individuals that didn't have the resources, that didn't have the financial means to be able to take a lawyer in. And so that's a different thing. Some people won't even go see a lawyer because they're automatically convinced they can't afford one. Right. So we had to change the narrative. We had to change the process of thinking. And the only way to do that was to step into the nonprofit sector.
And by going into the nonprofit sector, how does that help you then reach clients who can benefit from your services?
Yeah. So what we do is that the clinic basically has a screening system. It allows for us to reach those individuals who truly need help. So if you're somebody who can pay for legal services, the clinic's probably not going to be able to help you because our own resources are so limited. If you're in removal proceedings in LA, we can't help you, right? So it is limited in terms of its scope and its reach. But by the same token, I think we have plenty of work to do here, that we don't really need to go out of the area to fill the need.
And so potential clients, do they fill out an application? I mean, how do they get to you? How do they find out about what you're doing?
So one of the things that we did is that the Board of Immigration Appeals maintains a list of nonprofit providers. And they don't, like I said, the law doesn't provide for any kind of appointment of legal counsel, but what they will do is that they will provide a list of nonprofits or BIA accredited representatives that they will give that to people who are being detained or being put in removal proceedings. So part of where the clinic gets its clientele, if you will, is those individuals are in fact given that information. And the rest, I mean, we've been doing this now for all over 10 years now. So it's just word of mouth in the community, and it's one family after the other that we've helped that then go back out and go, maybe there's someone else that does need clinic services, and they'll refer people in to say, go check and make sure that you are eligible. But once they come in, the staff screens them. There's criteria for low bono, which is kind of our model. It's a low bono, pro bono model. And so what that does is there are some people who will pay a significantly reduced rate. And then there's some people who are completely pro bono.
Gotcha. I'd never heard low bono. That's a term I wasn't familiar with. So interesting. Every field has its own, little nicknames, if it were, kind of code. So over your 10 years, your decade, that's nothing to sneeze at. How many people would you estimate you've been able to help resolve their situation with immigration?
We maintain, so I would say probably in terms of cases that have come and gone, there's been about 800 of those cases. But that doesn't include some of the things that we've done when we pivot. That's also not all of the people that come in just for legal advice that are, not necessarily in removal proceedings or aren't going to secure or are ineligible for clinic services. But, COVID was really hard on us because immigration courts were closed. The Kansas City Immigration Court was almost closed for 2 years. And so we had to figure out, the rest of the world opened up, but the Kansas City Immigration Court was closed. And so we had to go to our board and say, we've got to find a creative way to survive this. And so like when the Afghan refugees were coming into town, into the area, they needed applications filed. So we went to our board and said, will you allow us to do this? It's not really within the parameters of what the clinic is designed to do, but we don't court, there's no court. So we may as well be of service. We may as well be of service in another way. So we've pivoted. So in that regard, if you look at the numbers, it's just hundreds of thousands of families.
Oh my gosh. And so about 800 cases that you have resolved in some fashion, but many, many more beyond that. Are you still doing things for Afghani, or now we have Ukrainian refugees as well?
Yeah, and we pivoted, and we did some of the Ukrainian work. We did a lot of the Afghan work. Now that the courts are open, we've kind of gone back to our roots to say immigration court proceedings first. But, we kind of address some of these things because, and I'm very blessed. I will say we are very, very blessed that we have a board that really gets it. And our board is so in tune with wanting to make a difference, wanting to be sure that the services the community needs are provided. And so they do give us a little bit of latitude to be able to go, okay, if there's a gap, can we pivot to do that? But keep in mind, Ruth, we have one attorney and one paralegal. And so, there's only so much one person can do. Now in fairness, the firm does provide a lot of support. We donate time energy, space, all kinds of other things that we donate to the clinic. But one true dedicated lawyer and one true dedicated paralegal, I mean, they do the lion's share of the work.
They're busy,
Yeah,
all the time. What are we dealing with here in Kansas City in terms of the number of folks that are having to deal with immigration court? I don't know if our audience has an idea of what the scope of that is here.
Well, would it blow your mind if I told you that the immigration court right now, only in Kansas City, it has 300,000 cases in backlog?
Oh my gosh. So what happens to those people as they're waiting?
That's what they're doing. They're waiting. There's no speedy trial. Remember, no right to counsel, no speedy trial, no rules of evidence. I mean, this is one of those systems where we like to joke that you are literally trying to do a trial with one leg tied behind your back and an arm tied behind your back and a blindfold on. And that's how you're trying to try a case. And, there's an immigration judge who says that immigration court proceedings are like trying to do a death penalty case in traffic court. And that's truly true.
Gosh.
And that's just how the system is set up. And oftentimes people who don't have a lot of exposure to the immigration court system don't realize that this is really what it looks like.
So with one attorney, full-time attorney, one paralegal, and I'm sure support from your firm, your board, how many cases are you able to handle, let's say, in a year?
I mean, usually the open active cases anywhere from the clinic maintains about 172 case
load.
Caseload, yes. In any given year. Sometimes, it ebbs and flows from there, but generally it's about 172 cases.
And you're dealing with the court and hearings, and I don't know, are there depositions and those kinds of things involved in these kind of cases?
I mean, technically they could, but we don't really see them a lot in immigration court. I mean, the process is there, but I've never really seen it utilized in real life. And so, no, there's no depositions, there's no interrogatories. But, the thing is that immigration, because it's a federal system, can shift if the Supreme Court of the United States makes a decision. It can shift if a different circuit. So, for example, the immigration court in Kansas City is located in the Lathrop and Gage building, by the way. It's up on the 5th floor. And people who want to go watch a court proceeding, they're more than welcome to go. It's an open courtroom. And what will happen, though, is it's in Missouri. So Missouri is in the 8th Circuit Court of Appeals. But that doesn't mean that when one of the other circuits doesn't get involved, that it doesn't pivot and change how the laws are applied even here. And so it's this constant battle to stay on top of the law because it's so rapidly changing.
We're talking with Rekha Sharma Crawford. She is the president of the clinic at Sharma Crawford Attorneys at Law. The clinic is a nonprofit. Rekha, give us the human side of this equation. I mean, we always hear numbers, hundreds of thousands of cases, but share that. That's got to be just really heart-wrenching at times.
The wins are super high and the losses are super low. I've never met a client who says, I don't want to do it the right way. I've never met that client, right? I've never met the client that says, if I had an opportunity to go through the process and get a benefit and do this the right way, that I would choose not to do that. They don't really do that. Most people want to live and work and take care of their families. And so really that's what they're after. Do the immigration laws need to be changed? Yes, they're absolutely harsh. They are unforgiving. They are broken. They're draconian. They're oftentimes unworkable. And so within that, what you find is, have you ever seen a desert and then in the desert, you see that one plant that somehow manages to find water to survive? Mm-hmm. Right? We've all seen that image. And in some ways, that's what we're fighting for, is that one plant that will just somehow find enough water to survive. And The highs are very high in terms of when you give someone back their life, they are very much grateful for that opportunity. The lows are very hard in the sense that when the laws don't provide an avenue of relief, telling that family that, look, there isn't really anything we can do. Yes, you've been here for 10 years. Yes, you've been here for 20 years. But, take someone who's been here for 20 years, but all they've done is worked hard and gone to work, paid their bills, paid their taxes, things like that. But they're not married or their kids are all much older. Mm-hmm. There's very little I can do for them. And most people don't realize that, right? Most people go, what do you mean? That doesn't make sense. And so yeah, the human side of it is I think, eye-opening for people who take a look to say, we never realized it was this way. Or more commonly, we didn't think it should ever be this way.
How does the clinic try to support, and I don't mean just dollar-wise, but how do you support some of these individuals and families that you work with as this takes its time to go through the system?
I mean, sometimes we're their friends, sometimes we're their counselor, sometimes we're their confidant, sometimes we're their mentor. There are people who we've watched them, we've watched their kids grow up because the backlogs are so long, that we've literally watched their kids grow up. We've watched families, grow and change, and people get married, and there's just all of these things. You almost feel like a part of their family because you've gone through so much with them. We've lived, births, deaths, weddings, you name it. So what we try and do, though, is we try and deliver honest, compassionate services that give them a fighting chance. Right. And we have found that if we are honest with people and we tell them what's going on, we try and provide as much information and education as we can, not only just to the community and the clients, but other lawyers. Immigration practice is tough, and there's not enough people doing removal defense. And so the clinic puts on a trial college once a year for attorneys.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah. For attorneys across the country. People come in from all over the country. And we've been blessed again to be able to partner with the Johnson County Community College, who lends us their space and their facilities to be able to bring in world-class faculty from across the country, who are known for trial work, who are known for doing that. We're blessed to be able to partner with the Johnson County Courthouse, who, again, give us their facilities to be able to give real courtrooms to lawyers to practice, to make their skills better. And the clinic has been doing that for the last 6 years. This last year was our 6th year of doing that. It's unheard of. No other place in the country does this.
That's just great. That must be very, very rewarding to see a light bulb maybe go off for other attorneys that then are able to kind of join you in this battle.
It's the raindrop theory. Is if we can make enough raindrops, maybe we can fill an ocean, right? And that's kind of the theory that we have is that if we can educate more people, if we can train more lawyers, if we can cut down or take down barriers to representation, then maybe there is some change we can do while Congress does their thing.
Is there anything that volunteers can do to help the clinic? Obviously, you can't go out tomorrow and become a lawyer, but are there other aspects of the clinic that folks in the community can help with?
Oh my gosh, one of the biggest things that we look at is, like I was telling you with our trial college, we give our attorneys live witnesses. So each attorney has a live witness, and we go into the community and we ask for volunteers. And so people who've never been exposed to the immigration court system, we say, look, come back and, test your acting skills and play a witness for us, because it's so helpful that, we can do it. Like you can do another lawyer cross-examination or direct examination with another attorney. It's a whole different ball game when you're doing it with a lay witness who's never really testified in court. And so it creates a really realistic training ground for the attorneys that are there to learn. So first and foremost, it's that. The other thing is we from time to time will have events that we ask the community to come out and support us. Like, for example, on August 5th, we have an event that we're doing. We're bringing in a comedian from New York it's a fundraising event for the community. And it's a fundraising event for the clinic. But again, we reach back out to the community and say, please help us do this. Come have fun, but then also come support the work so the work can continue.
So what's the best way for people to find you, to communicate with you?
Our website is theclinickc.org. And that's the easiest way to get a hold of us, because you can go on there. All of the board members are there. The emails are there. And if you reach out to us, we are absolutely going to respond to that.
All right. Well, now we have a secret to let everybody in on. You are an author. You are a published author. Would you share a little bit about your first book? And I believe there's another one that's about to come out, or it's out and it's just hitting the newsstands or the bookstores, so to speak.
It's not out yet. It will be out by September. So the first book that I wrote, and again, it was one of those things that, like I said, I came from this prosecution background. And in the criminal court system, there are a whole bunch of resources for children. There are resources to help them understand what the process is, who the players are, what's going on in court, what does the courtroom look like. And children have no idea. Right. And when I went looking for such a resource in the immigration court setting, there wasn't one. And so the first thing I did is I wrote a book that talks about, and it's really a resource book. It's called Alia the Brave, and it's for children to be able to talk about what happens when immigration enforcement occurs in their home. What you find in immigrant communities is much like people don't want to talk about certain things. What you find in immigrant communities is they don't really want to talk about their immigration status. They don't want to talk about, even in their families, about the possibility of deportation, because it's so scary for them that they don't want to share it with their kids. And so what we found is that teachers and counselors and resources, social workers, and lawyers had no resource to be able to sit down with these kids and say, look, you're going to go through this. We need you to understand what it is that's happening. And so that's where that book was created. And it is on Amazon. It's in English and it's in Spanish. And it was designed to empower children going through immigration enforcement so that they understand. But it really is more of a resource for counselors and teachers and parents and lawyers to be able to have those earnest conversations. That book has been out for about a year or more now. Oh my gosh, it just seems like it was yesterday. The other interesting thing is it's not necessarily immigration court related, but what we started to see, or rather I started to see, is that of late we've been starting to see more and more cases where children are being put in the labor force or children are being trafficked. Again, similar kind of things where you have people who can't. It's hard for children to talk about their experiences if they have nothing to relate it to. Or if they don't know that what's happening to them is wrong. It's very hard for them to talk about that. And so my next book that's coming out is about empowering children who have been, it's about human trafficking and how children can talk about those issues. So that's coming out, and it's called Finding Freedom. And it's about empowering youth who have experienced human trafficking.
Gosh, that's wonderful. When do you have time to do this?
At night.
The wee hours?
Yes, at night.
Wee hours?
Yes, at night. One thing I will mention, though, and this goes back to your question of how can the community support the clinic, the proceeds from both books are donated back to the nonprofit sector. So I don't keep it. Part of it goes to the clinic. The other part goes to a nonprofit called the National Immigration Litigation Alliance. And NILA does a lot of impact litigation. So like while we're fighting the small fights, they're fighting the big ones. And so in order, I mean, I kind of feel like we have to support not only the smaller causes, but the bigger causes. And so that's where the proceeds from the book go.
We only have a minute or two left. I wanted to leave a positive note for everyone because it's a tough subject, but what is the most rewarding for you in doing this kind of work?
I tell you what, somebody once told me, and it's the most impactful, most powerful thing I've ever heard. And we gave them not even their green card, just their work permit. And it was part of the process, and they were getting their work permit. With it, they could work, they could get a driver's license, they could get a social security card, they could kind of normalize out their life. And when we handed it to them, their response was, I feel like I've been given back my identity. And I thought there was so much power in that it was more about just their own essence and who they were. And to be able to give someone that, I think how can you not be addicted to that? That's
incredible. We take it for granted. I think for those of us who, grew up here, there was no question about, our status. We weren't from another country directly. So I think we all kind of lose sight of how precious and how difficult it can be if you don't have that. So the work that you are doing with the clinic is just amazing. Again, we want to send everybody to your website. So it's theclinickc.org. You can check out the work they're doing. You can support them. You can check out these books. I think that's great. We all need better children's books anyway. So thank you, Rekha, so much for the time you spent with us and sharing this incredible organization and the work you do.
Thank you, Ruth. This has been such a delight.
Thank you for joining us for KC Cares, Kansas City's nonprofit voice. We're produced by Charitable Communications, also a nonprofit. This KC Cares segment was brought to you by the Ewing Marion Kauffman Foundation, www.kauffman.org. If you'd like to be a guest for KC Cares, check out our website, kccaresonline.org, and spread the love. You'll find us on Facebook and Twitter at KC Cares Radio and Instagram at KC Cares Online. And catch us on Saturday mornings at 8 a.m. on ESPN 1510 AM and 94.5 FM. Thank you for joining us on KC Cares.